Hello, I'm Sophia, and today I'm going to share my experience at Crystal Springs. I will be describing what we did, saw, and learned. I will also be explaining water quality. This includes pH, dissolved oxygen, nitrates, and phosphates. All of this concludes my trip to the Crystal Springs Preserve in Florida. At one of the spots we stopped at, we collected some water from the spring and the river. We tested the water to find the pH, dissolved oxygen, nitrates, and phosphates. pH shows us how acidic, basic, or neutral water is. When you put molecules into water, they sometimes break down and release hydrogen. At other times, they release hydroxide. Hydrogen equals base, and hydroxide equals acid. The scale scientists use to measure pH goes from 0 to 14, where 0 to 7 is acidic and 7 to 14 is basic. On the scale, 7 would be neutral. Dissolved oxygen can enter the water from surface interaction with the atmosphere, plants in the water undergoing photosynthesis and giving off oxygen, and circulation of water, running water in a river, waves, travels over a rock, swimming, etc. Dissolved oxygen helps animals that live underwater live because they need it in order to survive. As decomposition of plant and animal material occurs, leaves breaking down dead animals or plants, etc., bacteria breaks down large protein molecules into ammonia. Ammonia combines with oxygen to form nitrates. Nitrates are important to look at when determining water quality. There are small amounts found naturally, but they can increase from humans. Septic systems, farms, and fertilizers all add nitrates to water. When finding how many nitrates are in the water, you want it to be a 0 or close, because that means the amount of nitrates going into the water and the amount the plants are taking in are equal. If it isn't at 0 or close, then that means there are too many nitrates going into the water. When phosphates are increased, they make aquatic plants grow like crazy. When this happens, there is a decrease of oxygen in the water. Fertilizers are phosphates, and an increase in phosphates means more algae growth, which blocks out sunlight, which means the plants underwater don't photosynthesize, and any animal that needs oxygen dies. So you can basically kill a waterway. Another area that we went to was the Hillsborough River, where we used nets to perform a river critter roundup. We collected a variety of animals, also known as biodiversity. Biodiversity means a variety of species / a quantity within the species. In certain places there are more species, and in some places this means a healthier environment is there. We saw a lot of biodiversity at Crystal Springs when we did the critter roundup in the Hillsborough River. The 7th grade students and even the teachers caught different variations of snails, fish, shrimp, spiders, and more. We collected these creatures by dragging a net along the shallow floor. Because of the season we are in right now and where we were looking in the river, not all of the species were found. In our group, we were able to catch 13 different species of animals. It was extremely fascinating getting to view all of the small creatures that were in the water. The last thing we did while we were at Crystal Springs is geocaching. We were given a GPS and had to locate different spots. When geocaching, we find our place by putting in the coordinates on a GPS, and that tells us which direction to move and how many feet or meters we have until we reach our destination. While geocaching, we had to move around certain places to prevent from running into wild animals or poison ivy, but by using the GPS, we were always able to find our place. The spring there is truly beautiful. Florida's 600 natural springs are fed by the Floridian Aquifer. Springs are places where groundwater in the aquifer discharges to the surface. When rain falls from the clouds, CO2 is dissolved in the raindrops. The rainwater percolates through the sand and soil on its way to the limestone bedrock of Florida. Once the rainwater hits the limestone, the CO2 dissolves the limestone, creating cracks. Over long periods of time, these cracks widen and eventually allow the water from the aquifer to escape to the surface, forming a spring. These springs provide a window on the aquifer. An aquifer is an underground layer of water-bearing rock fractures, or unconsolidated materials from which groundwater can be extracted using a water well. It is layers of rock, sand, gravel, shell, and clay that holds water. An aquifer is way below the surface of the earth and is the opposite of a spring. While we were there, we learned about limestone, too. Limestone is readily dissolved by water that has become slightly acidic, usually from carbon dioxide in the air. Caves are found where water has dissolved underground limestone and carried it away. In many caves, dripping water containing dissolved limestone slowly forms picturesque structures called stalactites and stalagmites. In addition to caves, depressions in the earth's surface called sinks or sinkholes are also found in limestone regions. One plant that really stood out to me was the poison ivy. While collecting water from the spring, our guide pointed at a vine climbing up a stump of wood and mentioned that it was poison ivy. When I observed it, I noticed the indentation on each side of the leaves about a third of the way up, and how there were 3 leaves on each piece. Of course I didn't touch it, but getting to put my nose a centimeter away from poison ivy was incredible. Poison ivy grows in woods, fields, and along roadsides and riverbeds. It grows in every region of the United States except the Southwest, Hawaii, and Alaska. Poison ivy has 3 thin, pointy, and shiny leaves. However, the shape and texture and color of the leaves can vary. Leaves are reddish in spring, green in summer, and orange, red, or bronze in the fall. Exposures are more common in the spring and summer. A person can get a rash by touching any part of the poison ivy plant or anything that has come in contact with poison ivy. This concludes my trip to Crystal Springs. I hope I get the chance to go back there again and see the captivating wonders of wild Florida.